Jesus is Lord. And he was such a nice Jewish boy. Jesus changed my life. And he's still in the life-changing business.
As Paul said, the love of Christ compels me.
You know, Randy, I think most people don't realize how much darkness there is in the world.
It can't be just coming to church and getting pumped up with a faith
You
message.
and I are all going to have something of faith in us.
Jesus died to save sinners, and you are a sinner.
Hello and welcome to CrossTalk. My name is Joshua Weiss, and we're here in studio with Mauricio Rodriguez, who we've been visiting with the last few programs. And the central focus of scripture that we've been using these last few programs is Jeremiah 29:11. It says, "For I know the thoughts that I think towards you, says the Lord, thoughts of peace and not of evil, to give you a future and a hope." And the unique story behind Mauricio is that when he was born into a home that didn't want him. And he was carried to full term by his mother, who hid the pregnancy. And then when she gave birth under a tree in the middle of a field, she discarded him. She threw him into an outhouse to die because she didn't want him and she didn't think anybody else would either. But that wasn't where the story ended, because God had a plan and God had a purpose. And some kids playing nearby came and heard you crying out in the outhouse, and you were rescued and raised in a Christian home, ironically, by the sister of your biological father who adopted you. This is a story that you couldn't, movies don't come up with these types of storylines. I mean, it's crazy what God has done in your life.
Yeah.
But I know that God has done some amazing things through your life. And now Mauricio's back in Nicaragua doing ministry work. And that outhouse, it's like, it signifies so much stuff. It's symbolic of your presumed death and symbolic of your life, all at the same time. And I know that when you went back there not many years back, you actually got to meet the lady who rescued you, and you got to meet the kids who found you. Tell me about the relationship with these kids. I mean, you knock on their door and you say, "Hi, what's going on? You rescued me when I was a baby." How'd that happen?
It was like you just said. I don't think Hollywood could put
No
a
chance.
script like this one, but the Lord, you know, in Psalms 139 it says, "Before that, from my mother's womb, He knit me together, and all the days ordained for me have been written in His book." So God has a story, and He writes our story. When things get messy, it's because we start writing our own story. And I said it in the past. Jeremiah 29:11 says our stories are to be filled with hope and a future. But it's the choices that we make that mess up God's story for us.
That's powerful. That's powerful, because a lot of times people will talk about how life is bad or life is, tough. And I'm not saying that life's not tough sometimes when you're even following with the Lord.
Yeah.
But if your life is in the pits, there is a good chance that you had something to do with that, and it's not because you can't blame it on Jeremiah.
Right. And so part of this story that I'm living is I got to meet all these people that were a part of what God had to do to clean up the mess that, my biological mom and dad created. And when I met her, she was just filled with joy and tears, because she didn't know what happened to me.
We're talking about the lady who
found me
Who
when
rescued you.
when I went into her home. Last time she saw me, I was a baby. Although we would go back. She never heard of me, and all she knew was that we left to America. And so here I come back, and I'm meeting with her, and I'm in her home, and I start asking her questions like, so can you give me the rundown of what took place? Does this place still exist? That's really what I wanted to know. Like, because there was a part of me where, because I was in the healing process where I almost went like, that can't be my story. Like, that didn't really happen to me.
When I ask, I grew up with 5 brothers and sisters, and I thought that was a lot. And when I ask stories about my childhood, I'm like, hey, Dad, Mom, I remember this. Is this right? But I'm talking about like when I slid, when I was sledding down the hill and went under the fence or something like that. Yours is, hey, you remember when you found me left for dead in an outhouse, laying on a piece of wood? Can you tell me that story?
Yeah, and
it's crazy.
I know. And then she just smiled. And she's like, why do you want to know?
It's so bad.
And that is like, that's such a bad part of your life, and you look so better now. Why do you want to go back? And I said, well, I want to know. And so she walked with me to where the tree and the outhouse is, and she showed me like, this is where, we realized that she gave birth to you because there was blood, and then the outhouse was just right there.
It's still there.
So it is still there, still its original wood, still everything is still there, and it's all.
I can only imagine as I'm walking up to this place and seeing, like, you see it in the distance getting closer as you're walking to it, and you're like, oh, that's where I was born.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like, this is symbolic of death, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you want nothing to do with that place, right?
Nope. There's a lot I want to do.
Why don't you tell us about it right after a short break?
Okay.
Stay tuned. This is really good. In Matthew chapter 13, Jesus shares a parable about sowing seed on good ground where it can produce crop that can yield 30, 60, and even 100 times the amount that was sown. As stewards of what God entrusts us with, we're responsible to sow into good ground that produces a good crop. In the business world, we call this a good ROI, or return on investment. I want to ask you to prayerfully consider making a good investment into the ministry outreach of CrossTalk International. The ROI is evidence that the Lord is doing some great things through this ministry. Several years back, our supporters made it possible for us to build a brand new leprosy clinic in the heart of Orissa, India. Every single month, CrossTalk provides all of the food and medicine that is needed for that ongoing clinic, serving dozens of leper patients. Last year, we took on the responsibility to provide food and housing for the children of those leper patients in an effort to help stop the ongoing spread of leprosy to their children. We have 20 different native missionaries that are on the ground throughout the 1040 window, speaking the language of their people and evangelizing the lost as their full-time occupation. Many of them have already planted churches and are moving on to plant new churches. But we're needing support. Our annual missions budget is only reached through the generosity of our supporters. Right now, we need to raise $11,000 for our leprosy outreach, $7,200 for our native missionaries, $8,600 for our Cuba outreach, and we need to raise money to complete the production of the next series of Today with God, featuring the Gospel of Luke. Your generous monthly support or one-time gift, it will sow vital seeds on good ground and reap a fruitful harvest. Thank you for your consideration to invest in the ministry outreach of CrossTalk International. All checks and gifts should be made payable to CrossTalk Missions. I can assure you that the ROI of your investment will be one that the Lord is happy with. Welcome back to CrossTalk International. I'm Josh Weiss. I'm here in studio with Mauricio Rodriguez, where we've heard the story of him being discarded, left for dead when he was born, and thrown into an outhouse next to the tree where he was born to be basically left for dead. And when he went back and found the lady who rescued him and went to go see this place, I can only presume you want to burn this place down, right?
Absolutely not.
Tell me about this, because this is good.
I got there and I wanted, you're always searching for what's my purpose? Why am I here? Why was I saved? And I started asking the Lord those questions. And I always tell people, don't ask God to tell you his plan and then want to bust a Jonah because you don't like his plan for your life. Well, that's exactly what the experience I got is the Lord was like, okay, here it is. You see this land, you see this tree, you see this outhouse. Yes, this is where something so horrible happened. But now I want you to come back, and this is your promised land. I want you to purchase this land, and I want you to build a center here with the name of Tree of Life 84, and took me to Revelation 22:2, where it says, and there's a tree of life, and the leaves of that tree are for the healing of the nations, and shows me that those leaves are his children, are us, and I see fingerprints as the leaves. And he says, this is the place where I want you to bring these girls that are feeling abandoned by their parents, abandoned by who got them pregnant, and begin to take them in and declare my word over their womb, over that child. And you disciple them. You train them to be the mothers that I created them to be. And they will help bring healing to this nation through their broken situation, through their brokenness. Because that is exactly what he's done with me. A place where something so horrific happened, I get to stand in front of that outhouse and smile on the good days and on the bad days. Because when things don't go right, when you go through discouragement out there, when you're feeling like it's Mauricio against the world, I get to go back and look at that place and say, well, if he took me out of that and I had nothing but him, and he's the one that's calling me to do this, the bank account, the timing doesn't matter. I'm just going to go and I'm going to trust him, and I'm going to do what he says to do, not based on what I have, but based on what he says I should do.
That's powerful.
And so that's where Tree of Life 84 came in. And the 84 is from Psalms that says, you pulled me out of a horrible pit. You set my feet upon a rock and established my steps. This was established by him the day I was rescued.
And it's Tree of Life 84 because it was 1984 when you were born and left for dead.
Correct.
But God.
But God.
I think it's so powerful that you have a vision. You don't own that land yet, right?
No, we don't.
But we're going to be believing with you and praying with you that land is yours. It's 400 acres, and on that acreage is this Tree of Life and this outhouse that represents death, where you're going to be able to say, you know what, if you've got your unwanted child, feel free, discard them right here.
That's right.
Because this is where the Tree of Life is. If you're a young lady who feels hopeless and abandoned, come right here. And let me speak Jeremiah 29:11 over you, that there is a plan and a purpose, a future and a hope for your life. And then let me speak it over that womb and that child as well, that there's a plan and a purpose, a hope and a future, because that's what God has not only said to you, not only written to you, but has demonstrated in your life.
That's right.
But until then, we've got to be faithful with the little things.
That's right.
We don't have this land yet. You don't own this land, and
No.
and sure, it's for sale, but only if you have this astronomical amount of money. So what are you doing in the meantime? Are you just waiting for it to come to your ownership?
Nope. I am doing what he said to do. Look around and start with what you have. And what I have is 17 communities around my promised land, with 10 elementary schools, with kids right now that need to be reminded of this hope, of this future, that they're loved, because many of them have been abandoned by their parents, so they're being raised by their grandparents up in the mountains.
So tell me what's that look like? I mean, how do you go to these areas? I'm sure you just get on the local freeway or take an Uber and you head over to the local village, hop out and go to the school, go to the front office. Tell me about, what's that look like?
Nope, I ride on a dirt road towards the main way to get there, and then I'll have to leave my truck and get either on a horse or an ox cart or walk. And we were looking at about an hour to two to get to some of the communities.
Obviously, I'm being a little facetious. I knew the story. You don't have the big highways to be able to get to these locations, but the area surrounding that 400 acres that we're believing with you for, that where that tree of life sits, where that outhouse that represents both death and now life, where that sits, that 400 acres is in the center, in the region. All the way around there is very hilly, mountainous area, and you'll take the main road, and then you'll do donkey or ox cart or horse or walk to these 19 villages all the way around there. And when you get there, instead of being seen as somebody who is just an American coming in, who wouldn't be allowed, you're seen as a Nicaraguan. And instead of being seen as a Nicaraguan just looking for a handout or for some churchy type thing, you're seen as the guy who has this testimony of being left, abandoned, and now coming back. And instead of being seen as just somebody coming back, you're giving a hope and a future in what you're teaching and what you're sharing as you walk that distance, ride the donkey that distance, ride the ox that distance, and you're making an impact even today. And I think that's wonderful. And I know that you are actually interested in taking the Today with God project as well. I want to hear a little bit more about how this project, the Today with God project, would be impacting in your ministry in those villages as you go around. So we're going to hear more about that in just a little bit after a short break. Stay tuned. Southwestern Assemblies of God University's School of Business has a vision to make an impact in the lives of students and the world. To be uncommon, you have to look outside the walls of traditional thinking. That is why they reached out to CrossTalk International to work together to develop a plan that teaches students to change the world by actually doing it. Dr. LaShonda Beckwith of SAGU and SAGU alumni Joshua Weiss of CrossTalk took a group of 10 believers to both India and Sri Lanka and engaged the people in ways that have never been done. The Business for Missions team put their education to practice as they did quality research to develop successful micro-businesses. This team is infusing hope into a people in need. The process of developing these businesses is a 3-year plan that will not only present ideas, but will help implement them and then make sure that they succeeded. The team also brought the quality teaching materials of the Today with God project and left tools for the local churches to be empowered to spread the Word of God to the people of India and Sri Lanka. Through the Today with God project, the Business for Missions team gave the opportunity to see, hear, and understand the visual presentation of the gospel message. Together, the Southwestern School of Business and CrossTalk International have provided the tools to be fishers of men, but have also shown how to be fishers of fish. With God's help, they are bettering people's lives in both physical and spiritual ways. And this is only the beginning. Welcome back to CrossTalk. I'm Joshua Weiss, and we've been in studio with Mauricio Rodriguez from Nicaragua. And before the break, we talked a little bit about the work that you're doing all the way around this area of what you call your promised land. And that promised land is where you were born, where you were left for dead, and where you were found, much like our own spiritual journeys as believers. And I know that you had shown interest in bringing the Today with God project into that area, perhaps on projection devices and little Bluetooth speaker devices and spandex that we could spread between trees to show the visual Bible movies and the Today with God project. What does something like this mean for that area if you were able to bring a visual presentation of the gospel, dramatically reenacted in the language of those villages? What type of impact? How would this be beneficial, and why?
Well, first of all, there is no local ministries out there, and the ones that have gone in, they're very legalistic. So, for example, there's a list of rules that you have to abide by before you're loved or accepted. And so, with a message of this is who Jesus really is, and this is who God is, and this is how much you're loved, and this is using visuals, that is huge because a lot of people can't read or write up in the villages, and so being able, I can see it right now where we're putting, you know, the sheets between the trees, and just them learning about who God is and what Jesus did on earth, and like we're called to be his hands and feet. And so I'm just visualizing this and going, yes, because it would be so easy to carry, and it's not complicated. And so this excites me, the possibilities of just being able to take something like this for them is very exciting.
One of the things that you had shared with me was that a lot of Nicaraguan culture, it's very similar to the Cuban culture because of the influence that came from Cuba. The Cuban revolutionaries are kind of made into heroes, and just the way the culture is there, where people are looking towards that background, that communist flair. I think it's neat what God has done within our ministry, because the program that you're going to be taking back with you on USB flash drives and the projector and the Bluetooth speaker, that entire project of Today with God in Spanish is something that we struggled with for many years to get into Spanish, which is ironic because we're based out of the Dallas area where there's tons of Spanish speakers, but we couldn't get it in Spanish until God made it happen in Cuba. And now the Cuban Spanish version is being brought to a Nicaraguan people to impact them through the ministry of someone who was left for dead in the Nicaraguan village outhouse. I mean, just the way God works, it's kind of like you can't make this stuff up.
Yeah.
And it's encouraging to know that God does have a plan. He does have a purpose. And through that plan, through that purpose, we're able to spread hope. Through the hope he's given us, through the hope he's given you, and the hope that he's going to be giving to these villages. And so I'm excited about what God's going to be continuing to do through our ministry relationship. What can our audience be praying with you for? What kind of specific things should we be asking the Lord for, interceding on your behalf for, and just lifting you up in prayer for? Give us some specifics.
The land. There is so much that I know God has promised that is God's going to use this place, and I've had this sense for a very long time of I'm being called to raise up in that land who the next leader will be for that nation. We don't know who and how and when God's going to do this. But every time I see a child, I'm reminded the responsibility that I have with heaven to be able to make an impact in the lives of every person I reach. But specifically, there's something about that land. Once you experience it and you walk it and you sense God's presence there because of what he's calling me to do, that's what keeps me going. That's why I don't quit, or I don't allow the fear and the doubt to limit me. But specifically be praying for that the Lord would make the funds to come from whoever he's going to use for us to get this land and get this center up and running, because the need is so much in that, and not only in that area, but in the nation, and there is no place. There is no orphanage in the north. There are no places where teen girls can go and get help. And so this is why we have the cases of kids being left for dead. And so believe with me more than ever before that will take place. And also a high school. I just before I left submitted paperwork for a high school to be approved up in the mountains, because I have several kids that all they get to is up to 6th grade.
So the surrounding communities only go up to 6th grade with education, and we're going to believe for a high school. We're going to believe for the land, and we're going to be praying for your ministry, because God's got a powerful call on your life. He's given you a testimony for a reason. And so I want to ask you to lift Mauricio and his ministry, Tree of Life 84. Lift them up. Pray for them daily. Pray for the funds to become available, or pray for this land to just be donated. Pray that this land, though, with all of its significance, with all of its the centrality of the region where he's been ministering, the centrality to his own testimony, the centrality to that local area in the north that's in need of a high school. Pray that God provides the funding for the land, or the land itself, and pray for favor with regards to this high school. And pray for success as he continues the ministry that he's begun, as he begins to bring the Today with God project around, that he'll be encouraged by what God's continuing to do. I want to encourage you, as you watch, to remember that God is faithful.
Yes.
And that you might be going through something that seems dark. You might be going through a trial or a difficult time, but that's not the focus. The focus is always on why God has called you, what God has called you for, and being faithful to that calling. He has a plan. He has a purpose. There's hope and a future for you. But you have to submit yourself to God, to lay yourself at the altar of His feet and say, God, use me, and He will. Until next time, I encourage, if you need prayer, if you want to give us a call or write to us, we do read each piece of mail that we get. You can call us at 1-800-688-3422. You can check us out online at crosstalk.org, and of course social media, CrossTalk TV. You can of course find me on social media as well, Joshua D. Weiss, and Mauricios, one of my friends, on there. And you can write to us. The address is on the screen. Until next time, be encouraged. Shalom, and God bless.